Joining me on the program now is a candidate of the Kwara Central Senatorial District on the platform of the People's Democratic Party. He's also a former Minister of Youth and Sports Development and, of course, a former spokesperson of the All Progressives Congress. Welcome, Bolaji Abdullahi, to the program. So good to have you here again.
Thank you.
Of course, we'll just want to find out how you have been since your emergence as the PDP Kwara Central Senatorial candidate in the midst of what looks like a full dose of confidence on you because you didn't have any opponent. It was just an affirmation. That shows how strong you're on ground. Tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, it's not so much. Thank you very much for inviting me. My emergence as a consensus candidate for the senatorial district is not so much a reflection of my strength, as an individual, but as an outcome of the tradition within our political family and how we prefer to do things, which is by consensus. Largely it's about that. Secondly, if you look at the cast of the candidate that PDP is putting forward, you can see that our party has tried to put in the best possible, being aware of the enormity of the challenges. I mean, in terms of the kind of work we will expect to do when we win elections. So it's more of that than my personal strength.
Yeah, and people will say this is more of like a proxy war between Bukola Saraki, former president of the Senate, and Governor Abdulrahman Abdulrazak, because your major opponent is going to be Saliu Mustafa of the APC, who is being backed by Governor Abdulrahman Abdulrazak. What do you say to political observers who say that the battle is not that of yours and Saliu Mustafa, it's about those behind the scene?
No, I mean, it's possible to look at it that way, but that will not be exactly correct. I mean, I think as much as possible, we look at the people on the ballot. I mean, with due respect to my opponent, I mean, I think there's going to be a direct battle between those who are going to be on the ballot, regardless of whatever else is happening in the background, So for me, I think it's an opportunity for all of us as individual candidates to showcase what we can do for Nigerians, for our constituents, and to also have regard for where we are coming from. This is a time for everyone to show that this is who I am, this is where I'm coming from, these are my credentials, these are the things I've done before. And on the basis of this, I'm promising that I will do this. So I think it will be shortchanging the people who will line up to vote for us to reduce this to a proxy war between two big men behind the scene. Then it makes people like us look almost superfluous.
Yeah, but I mean, sorry to intervene. You and I know that there's an unfinished battle, political battle in Kwara State with the Otoge revolution that came in place in 2019. Even Governor Abdulrahman Abdulrazak seat itself is said to be shaky because of this impending political battle in Kwara State, considering the internecine conflict in the APC on its own. And then, of course, the PDP generally having looked like it's having a smooth sailing its own politics in Kwara. Tell us how prepared your political family is with the Saraki political dynasty to be able to challenge what seemed like a never-ending contending battle between the two political families of the Abdulrazak and the Sarakis.
No, I think it's people looking at it from with the what is it called, a telescopic lens, that will see a battle between Abdulrazak family and the Saraki family. It is absolutely not about that. There may be those who will see those undercurrents. I mean, if you are looking for anything, if you look so hard, you will find. But the most significant thing is that in 2019, there was something close to a revolution, right, against our political family, the Saraki political family, and we accepted the outcome and we stepped aside to say, okay, you want a change, now let's see how it plays out, but I mean, we are not happy to say that in less than 4 years, people are looking back to say, oh, we shouldn't have done that, and this is a fair representation of opinion that is dominating within. So if Governor Abdulrahman or anybody in the APC is not a favorite of the people, is not going to be because it's of the fight between Saraki and Abdulrazak. It's because they failed to deliver on the promises they made to the people, because they overpromised right? So they under-delivered. So they were not able to manage the expectations of the people. That's number one. Number two, they were not able to manage their own internal conflict, their own internal politics, to the extent that everything blew over, and a large chunk of what constituted the Otoge movement had to leave and find shelter elsewhere. So that's what you have, more or less, what you have as the APC in the state now is more or less a smaller rump of the original APC that championed the Otoge thing in 2019. So that's where we are.
Yeah, and tell me how you're milking this and then cashing in on the opportunity to present yourself as someone who should be voted in as the Kwara Central Senatorial District, considering that this senatorial district is a much coveted senatorial district.
Absolutely.
I mean, the former president of the Senate, Bukola Saraki, was there. Yeah. Ibrahim Oloriegbe came and defeated him in the midst of the Otoge revolution, which means enough is enough. But unfortunately for Ibrahim Oloriegbe himself, he's been displaced by Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak, and Saliu Mustafa has been brought in place. So there just seems to be what looks like conflict everywhere. How do you think you can take advantage of this to the advantage of the PDP?
No, you see, it's very straightforward. It's very straightforward. Like you rightly pointed out, look at the list of the illustrious people from Kwara Central that have gone to the Senate. We talk of from the patriarch, Dr. Olushola Saraki himself, to Dr. Salman that followed him, to Senator Gwemi Saraki, to Dr. Bukola Saraki, now to Dr. Oloriegbe, who is currently the Senate. So Kwara Central has always produced an illustrious cast of people to represent us in the Senate. And I think I fall in that category. I think I'll be following in the long list of that, in the tradition of Kwara Central choosing high quality people to represent them in the Kwara Central. Because I believe, with due respect and humility, if you look at my antecedents, where I'm coming from, what I've done by the grace of God, I think I have so much going that I can throw in the ring as a credential.
Yeah, and so what are those specifics you're bringing to the table?
I mean, if you're talking about the pedigree, I mean, apart from the education, I started as special assistant in Kwara State. Then I became special advisor on policy to the governor. Then I became commissioner for education in Kwara State for 4 years. Then I became a federal minister for 3 years. Then I went on to become the spokesperson of the ruling party. So I have traversed the entire spectrum of the political hierarchy in the last couple of years. And I think if that doesn't count for something, then what does count? And so people will look at me, and like I said, my opponent that you've mentioned, I wouldn't mention him, but you brought him in. I mean, that
I have to bring him because they're contending for us.
Exactly.
I mean, we are talking about the Turaki of Ilorin.
Absolutely,
who seems to have a backing of the Emir of Ilorin and all of that.
Absolutely,
in the midst. How would you defeat such a formidable opponent?
Absolutely the point. You see, my opponent is a big man in the real sense of it. Big man in the sense that he's a Turaki of Ilorin. That's a very senior traditional title. So he's a very big man, right? But that's exactly the problem. Where Nigeria is today, we don't need big men. We've done the politics of big men over the years, and we have seen where it has landed us. What we need now is a politics of big ideas. People who have done things before,
like the late,
who have succeeded before.
Isaiah will say,
exactly.
Politics of big ideas.
People who have done things before, people who have succeeded before, people who have failed before and have learned from their mistakes. Not someone who is coming with the regalia and hoping that the force of his personality alone will be the credential that people will vote for. Someone that ordinary people can relate with, because he's not seeing himself in hierarchy as being above the ordinary people, a commoner like the people, right? Who can connect with the people, who can speak their language, who understand their pain, given his background, given his antecedents. So that is what I'm relying on, right? And I believe that if we put the two credentials side by side, the credential of my opponent as a big man, a traditional title holder, and my credential and someone who has served the state, who has served this country, right, who can point at things that he has done before, I think the people will know what to do. And
you're not afraid that your votes will be divided by the SDP candidate who seems to come from your area?
No, not at all. You see, it's a completely different dynamic, right? It's going to be, for governorship, it's going to play out differently. For the senatorial election, it's going to play out differently. In fact, for presidential election, it's going to play out differently. And the thing is that the presidential and the senatorial election will come first.
The same day.
And it's going to have huge consequence on the following weekend's election, right? So I'm not so bothered. Of course, like I said, with due respect to every candidate that's also emerged from other parties, but I don't fear that the candidate of one party would. I think those who will vote for PDP will vote for PDP, right? Because ultimately, it's about the party. It's about the party. It's about those who have seen what APC has done to Nigeria, and those who remember what PDP did with the opportunity they had, and who will now look and ask themselves, what have we seen in the last 7 years?
Yeah, and you seem to have been condemning your former party in harsh terms. This is the party that you all formed together. I mean, alongside your political benefactor, Bukola Saraki, and other governors like Rotimi Amechi, who moved in 2014, including PDP presidential candidate at the moment, Atiku Abubakar, before they all left. And of course, you had to resign your position as the APC National Publicity Secretary. Don't you think you were too harsh on your former party by saying that it seems to have failed in all indices of governance?
I mean, I'm not being too harsh, and I didn't intend to be so condemning. Of course, there are people in PDP, in APC, that have also done something that are quite remarkable, right? But the point I seek to make is that yes, it was my party. I was part of it. In fact, I was the deputy director of policy and strategy in the 2015 campaign.
Presidential campaign.
No, but the point is this: when we were fighting the 2015 election on the premise of change, we believed. It wasn't just a slogan. We believed, like millions of Nigerians, that it was actually an opportunity for us to set Nigeria on a different trajectory, right? So when we were doing all that we were doing, formulating all the policies, believing that we will have an opportunity to turn Nigeria around, we believed, you know. But after the election, what we saw was completely different from what we anticipated. We were anticipating a party that would form a government from day one and would allow people who know how to do the job to do it. Look, you needed to be in the room when we were discussing the policies of APC in 2015. We brought people from all over the world who volunteered at their own expense, you know, because they believed, like us, that it was an opportunity to do something for Nigeria, right? So, and we had these beautiful policies, beautiful ideas, including how to fund some of the big promises that we're making, right? But unfortunately, the people lurking in the background while we're doing all that work had a completely different idea of what needs to happen, or what needed to happen, or what they thought they were doing. And you know what happened? The moment the moment the party came into power, the moment the president was sworn in, all the work we did was dismissed, like as promises of some overzealous party members.
Yeah, I mean, that's when Nigerians started calling you all promises cancelled. I mean, at some point, a lot of Nigerians were worried because, I mean, when people like yourself, Bukola Saraki and others moved into APC, moved in Kwara there, and you had to align with people like Lai Mohammed. A lot of Nigerians were happy that, you know, progressives were coming into power.
Absolutely.
Some of the things you are sold to Nigerians were, I mean, good ideas that were workable and so on. But what went wrong? Because you can't absolve yourself from the wrongs of this government, having been a federal minister in this same Buhari administration.
No. I wasn't a federal minister in Buhari administration.
I remember under Jonathan.
Dr. Goodluck Jonathan's administration.
The preceding administration, the eventual,
administration. But if you want to allocate blame, you will not be wrong to say I played a part.
Having been APC National Publicity Secretary, because
so
you were in the National Working Committee of the party.
Absolutely. So I can take that vicarious liability, but only vicariously, right? This is not the platform to begin to reveal all that happened within the party and all that happened that led us to where we were, right? And I'm saying that, look, I've just mentioned a couple of responsibilities that I've had to handle at the state and the national level. I can tell you without any fear of contradiction that the toughest assignment I've had in my life was as a spokesperson of the APC. You know, it's one assignment that if you are not careful, you could easily lose everything you've worked for over the years, because there's no way you will do that assignment and not tell lies. There's no way you will not do it and not whitewash things.
Propaganda, like
and not do
you
things.
said.
and not do things that you are not supposed to do, that run counter to ethics, right? Because they were really not. Okay, look, how will anybody defend? How will anybody defend the fact that no part of Nigeria is safe today? How do you want to defend that? How do you defend that September is coming? Parents are not just worrying about how to pay school fees, but they are worrying about whether their children will be safe when they go back to school. How do you defend that if you were a spokesman of the party? How do you defend that? How do you defend the fact that, look, we're talking about poverty being, Nigeria being the poverty capital of the world. But what we are not doing sufficiently is when we disaggregate, we're not identifying what are those key drivers that of this poverty, you know. And I'll point out one factor to you. The universities have been on strike for how many months now? 6-7 months?
Yeah, since February 14.
Since February 14, right? It's sad enough that students are not getting education because they had to go home because of ASU strike. But one point that we often overlook is that the universities are also economic communities, right? Universities are also economic communities. There are people who rent hostels to students. There are people who sell food to students. There are people who sell clothes to students. There are some towns and communities in this country that once the university shut down, the entire economy of the community shuts down, right? So little wonder that poverty keeps getting worse every day. So it's not just about the education of students, which of course is the most important thing, but I'm saying that
even the host communities,
are sinking further, into poverty. So how do you explain that? How do you explain that everyone seems comfortable that these children are home for 6-7 months, right? And what you hear government ministers saying is that we are not going to borrow money to pay ASU. How does that solve the problem, right? So that's what I'm saying. So when I say APC has failed Nigeria, I'm ready to defend the fact that I was a spokesman of APC.
So it's not out of bitterness that yourself and your political group lost out in APC.
No, not at all.
It's based on objectivity from your own understanding that the country, in quotes, doesn't seem to be moving towards the right direction.
It's even more painful for some of us who saw the promise at the beginning, who were sold on the promise, and who actually sold the promise to Nigerians, right? It's more difficult for us, right? Because we believed, like I said, we believed genuinely that we're going to have an opportunity to save Nigerians. And I know so many people who had left this country after all that happened to say, oh, come on, that was a bloody waste of time.
You were once the Minister of Youth and Sports. You would have heard of the Jackpot syndrome that's going, people just want to leave Nigeria and all of that. So what sort of credible alternatives would you and your party be offering Nigerians? I mean, your new party, the PDP, or should I say old one, because you were in the PDP before you moved to APC and all of that. So what are the credible alternatives that you have to offer Nigerians, especially if you get yourself, if you find yourself in the Senate?
You see, thank you very much. The point I'm making is that as I'm aspiring to go to the Senate, and I'm taking this very seriously, I'm taking this very seriously because I believe Nigeria is in a dire strait. Nigeria desperately needs to be rescued. And in a democracy, the conversation about how to reconfigure Nigeria, how to retool Nigeria to function appropriately is going to take place in the National Assembly. I want to be part of that conversation. All right?
That's if your presidential candidate wins and then he's willing to restructure the country. Because we've seen parties winning and then they just deviate from the campaign promises.
You see, all the same, you see, in a democracy, the National Assembly remains the heart of democracy. That is the aggregate representation of the people of Nigeria, whether the House of Representatives or the National Assembly. If you have only 40% of people in the National Assembly believing that Nigeria needs to go in this direction, and they are willing to make the right sacrifices to make Nigeria go in that direction, it can work. It can work.
We saw your principal, Bukola Saraki, trying that as the president of the Senate.
Absolutely.
But he fell out with President Buhari and his team. It looks like he was running too fast for the then APC-led federal government. How do you create that sort of synergy between the executive and, of course, the parliament to be able to drive some of these reforms? Because Nigerians keep saying Nigeria is ripe for reforms.
You see, whether we like it or not, we've got to a point where nothing else can function unless we sit down to ask the tough questions, right? You know, when things are not so bad, you can begin to say, let's manage it. But you and I know that things are so bad, in fact, more than we are willing to say in public, right? Everyone knows that Nigeria is in a very, very bad state. So whether we like it or not, that conversation must happen. Even those who are opposed to moving in progressive directions, when it becomes impossible for everyone's life to function at the minimum basis, which is guaranteeing individual security, then we must be forced to come to the table. And like I said at the event that you referenced, moment of great crisis also presents moment of great opportunities, right? I think the crisis that Nigeria is going through at the moment is what we call disequilibrium, right? It's a fertile ground to also begin to renegotiate how the institutions of this country, the government institutions of this country must function, the philosophy that must drive the governance of this country, the temperament that must drive the governance of this country. So I'm saying, in other words, that the opportunity that I seek is to be part of those who will emerge as the progressive bloc within the National Assembly to begin to ask these difficult questions and begin to
not the progressives of the APC, I guess.
No, not that kind of progressive, you know.
Now, I want to find out from you, having been an insider in the APC, before we come to your new party now, the PDP, what's the difference between the APC of 2015 and the APC of today, having been an insider?
Well, I think the APC of 2015 was an APC that is still being driven by hopes and possibilities, right? Nigeria was still willing. Look, when the government started in 2015, for about 100 days or so, unfortunately, the president was not in the country because he was indisposed. So the country. But Nigerians were not complaining. Nigerians still believed that something will come out of it because they saw and they believed the promises that we made. What with the reputation, the personal reputation of the president himself?
The body language, and all
exactly. What with the history that the president was bringing in as a man who had zero tolerance for corruption, as a man who was a no-nonsense person, who knew exactly what he wanted to do, right? What about that? What about the people saw the documents that we produced? And they believed that these people knew what they were doing. So the APC of 2015 was still being driven by that possibility, that dream of a new Nigeria. But the APC that came in 2019 had lost that mystique, right? Now Nigeria, the honeymoon was over, right? Yet they won the election, right? That does not necessarily reflect, the reality in the country, what people think, what people feel, right? So coming to 2019, it's possible that the key drivers of the government in 2019 felt that, well, now they've reached the cruising point, they can now relax and enjoy the flight.
Unfortunately, it wasn't an easy flight.
Yeah, it got very bumpy, and that's why we said this country today, Nigeria, unfortunately, is like that Titanic, that Titanic, the ill-fated ship. You remember it? Yeah. that was already like halfway under the water, and the band was still playing.
Yeah, I mean, right at the top.
Yeah, right at the top, even while. So unfortunately, that's
okay. I'll ask you to hold on. Let's go on this short break, and when we come back, we'll coast home. You're still watching the Arise interview. Stay with us, and when we come back, the conversation continues. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Somna Sambo, and of course, we are still having a discussion here with the candidate of the Kwara Central Senatorial District. He used to be a former Minister of Youth and Sports in the Federal Cabinet, and of course, a former spokesman of the All Progressives Congress, but he's now in the People's Democratic Party, and he's going to be flying the party's flag in the 2023 general election. And I'm talking of none other than Bolaji Abdullahi. So good to still have you here. Now, let's talk about the politics of PDP now. You must have seen what's going on between Atiku Abubakar and who is the presidential candidate of the party, and of course Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, and this is really polarizing the party. There's call for your national chairman to be sacked, Yoche Ayu, or he should resign before the sack comes from anywhere. Yeah. What do you make of that? And isn't that going to affect the chances of the party, the state chapters, and of course even at the federal level?
No, I don't think so. You see, the good thing is that this, when the INEC released the timetable, where those of us who are aspiring were a bit worried that what should be normally a sprint has been made a marathon race for us. So it's going to be a lot more expensive, a lot more exhausting, and all that. But it's turning out to be a saving grace for most of us, because it gives a lot of room to get some things right ahead of the election. So if we had only 1 or 2 months after the primaries,
as it used to happen,
it would probably have been difficult to manage some of these fallouts, But what is happening now that people call crisis within the party is actually what I would call creative tension, right? People are negotiating. That's what is going on. Governor Nyesom Wike is not going to leave PDP. He's PDP. I mean,
well, so but with the romance of the APC leaders, I mean, shouldn't your presidential candidate be afraid, or even party members be worried? It's
what I would call, like I said, is negotiation, right? The optics that you see sometimes is part of the negotiation, right? So ultimately, these things will be, I mean, all of us who are party members want it to be resolved and put behind us as quickly as possible so that we can face the business of fighting for the next election, right? But what I'm saying is that it's not going to be the deciding factor in this election. I am confident that the issues will be resolved. So what you see is just negotiation. But when negotiation is taking place in a marketplace, right? The part of the strategies and antics look like people fighting, but in reality it's just negotiation.
Yeah, so in this game, where does the Saraki political family stand? I mean, we've always seen Saraki being with Atiku Abubakar. He was made the campaign DG and all of that, but he's been lukewarm and very quiet. And some people say, even as a former president of the Senate, people like that need to intervene in huge crises like
He's
this.
doing a lot of that, actually, because that's so. You see what you see in the open. In Yoruba parlance, we have a proverb that someone who goes to a funeral to wail and tear their hairs, and actually not the ones mourning. The people who actually take the body and put in the ground are the people who are actually doing the burial, So, but you may not hear them shouting and crying and wailing and all that. So, a lot of things are happening behind the scene. So Dr. Saraki is a frontline player in that regard. He is a Democrat. I mean, he has proven it time and time again. I mean, so after the primaries and he lost the primaries election, he declared his support for without being prompted.
Yeah, I mean, right there at the stage, I saw him, and I was even worried for him at some point in time. Isn't it too early?
No,
I mean, for you to be
no, he's very clear. He's very clear about all that, and he's always told us that at the end of the day.
So does that mean he wasn't in that race to win, and that's why he was so quick to just move?
No, he was.
A lot of people would have thought maybe he will sit back, calculate his losses, and then decide what next, because it wasn't only about him.
Yeah, but if you are a party man, at the end of the day, it's about the party. And the situation at hand, it goes beyond individual ambition. And Dr. Saraki has always said that. It's about the party. And it's about the country. And he proved that when he was Senate president, at great personal sacrifices, at great personal cost, he proved that he will have jumped in bed with the ruling party and enjoy whatever they are enjoying. But he chose to take a more difficult position, which is to be on the side of probity. I can assure you one thing, and I've said it repeatedly. Were Dr. Saraki to be the Senate president today, this ASU strike will not be lingering up to now. He will have done something. He will have called the election. He will have done something.
And I remember there was also an ASU strike while he was
he will have done something. He will probably have gone to sit on the president's neck, and if he needs to beg him or do whatever, he will have. He's someone who, so for him, it's always about the country. You see, and for some of us who are from where we come from, I like to say that geography is destiny. For those of us who come, we know that this country being together, this country functioning at optimum capacity is our best chance of survival. Those of us from Central.
Yeah, from the North Central
exactly.
of the country. And
so you understand what I'm saying? So for Dr. Saraki, it's about how can we move this country forward? And for him, look, I don't even want to begin to imagine how much money he spent crisscrossing this country trying to mobilize votes. But the moment the primaries were done with and a winner emerged, he didn't need any problem. In fact, I said to him, "Sir, don't you think you need to go away for a while to decompress?" He said to me, "Decompress from what?"
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you this question. Kwara State has always been seen as a hermaphrodite state. It's when it comes to the north, it claims to be in the north, and sometimes when it comes to the south, because of language and all of that tribal affiliation, it still identifies itself as being south. In the midst of the elections that we're having, with the Tinubu coming from the southwest, he speaks at least the language that's majority spoken in Kwara State, and Atiku Abubakar coming from the north, and of course Fulani, and then of course Peter Obi, who's Labour Party, of course coming from the east. Wouldn't Kwara and his political leaders be accused of abandoning the Yoruba race if they don't pursue a Tinubu agenda, at least stiltily? Because some people will say that, look, having been Yorubas, there's a way you can do it and support him at the background.
You see, we say that we are Ilorin people. Those of us from Ilorin, we say we are Ilorin people, right? And our friends in Yoruba land, we say, no, you are Yoruba. We say, no, we are Ilorin people. Yeah, I mean, you need to travel way back in history, to identify us as. So we don't self-identify. We speak the Yoruba language, but we don't self-identify as Yoruba. We self-identify as Ilorin people. I know it, and as I'm speaking to you, I'm sure some Yoruba people are angry.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said it's a hermaphrodite state. And it's cost you so much.
It's not hermaphrodite. You see, we just need to look at we just need to be humble enough to look at the specifics of history. In Ilorin people, you have people who are organically Nupe-speaking people who speak only Yoruba, right? We have a Magaji in there you understand? We have people who are organically, the Emir of Ilorin, for example, the ruling family, they are organically Fulani people, right? But they speak Yoruba, they don't speak a word of Fulfude, right? And you have other people as well, the Gambari people, the Hausa people, who are Ilorin people. So we are all united under this identity of Ilorin people, right? That you cannot with precision call us Yoruba, right? Because there are Ilorin people who are not Yoruba, right? I'm Yoruba, right? But if my Ilorin identity come in context with that, I look at my brothers and I see someone who's Ilorin like me, but who is Fulani by origin. Yeah. So it's evolved.
It's a mixed grill. So and the question is, wouldn't the Yoruba race feel betrayed that you're not supporting Tinubu, even though you're in different political parties, but for what's called Yoruba Parakpo?
No. They'll probably say we are Mesuja and Bahad like they like
which is what you don't like being called.
No, it doesn't matter anymore. We are very clear about where we are. We are PDP, right? We are not going to. That's our party. Right, and
you have a Professor Gambari in the villa supporting President Muhammadu Buhari and all of that.
That's why I said it's PDP. If you go to Ilorin, you see APC people, you see PDP people, you see Labour Party people.
So Atiku should not be afraid. You're fully with him.
No, absolutely, we are PDP. No, 100%, 100%, we are with our
candidate. And your last words to your constituents as we begin the preparation for the campaigns. Of course, you can't campaign now, but what do you have to say in terms of your senatorial bid?
Well, I mean, for me, the most important thing, like I've always said, is that we should see this as an opportunity to put Nigeria to set Nigeria right. Look, when you find yourself in a ditch, the least common sense thing you could do is to stop digging. At least stop digging, right? So where we have found ourselves today, those of us who are aspiring for leadership position in 2023 are hoping that we'll be part of a team that will stop this steady regression of the country, not only into anomy, but into absolute poverty. So I believe that 2023 presents an opportunity for us as a people to choose what kind of country we want.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that we'll choose wisely. Having seen where we are now.
Well, you have a big battle ahead of you, like I said earlier, because having to battle the Turaki of Ilorin, Saliu Mustafa, I don't know what will happen with the governor behind him, but we can only wish you the best.
Those of you who are outside are seeing a different picture from those of us who are inside.
We can only wish you the best. Bolaji Abdullahi is the former Minister of Youth and Sports Development, and of course, he's the senatorial candidate for Kwara Central Senatorial District, a very, very formidable senatorial district in Kwara State. And of course, he used to be a former spokesman of the APC. We can only wish you the best. We thank you for being in studio. Well, that's how it's been for this edition of the Arise interview. Do join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Somna Sambo.